I would like to introduce our first speaker today. So we are very privileged to have Dr. Steve Blake here with us today, speaking on arthritis, a natural approach. And he has a doctorate in holistic health, specializing in nutritional biochemistry. He also has a doctorate in naturopathic medicine and is a neuromuscular therapist. He offers classes at the University of Hawaii. On Maui and Oahu, he has taught classes at Stanford University, McLean Hospital, and at Boston University Medical Center. He's the author of 29 books and software tools, including the 2008 McGraw-Hill textbook, Vitamins and Minerals Demystified. And he's just completed writing the book, A Nutritional Approach to Alzheimer's Disease. Let's give him a big welcome, Dr. Steve Blake.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. We come from Maui, Hawaii, myself and my wife, and it's really nice to be here. It is amazing, the wonderful weather that you're having here. It's just like being at home. I had to take my coat off, sorry. Don't look too formal anymore. So today I'm going to talk about arthritis and a natural approach to it. As was mentioned, nutritional biochemistry is my field. And outside of teaching at the University of Hawaii, I also am the nutritional biochemist for the Pacific Neuroscience. And we're just about to start a trial on Alzheimer's disease that I've written to use 15 different nutritional approaches at once to stop the progression of Alzheimer's disease. I do have some donation forms on my table that go right to the foundation if you want to support what could be the only cure for Alzheimer's disease found. And by cure, I mean stopping the progression, not reversing it, which is clearly impossible. But today, it's arthritis there. It's a painful disease. It starts with perhaps some stiffness in the joints and can progress to disability, with pain and inflammation being the chief problems. About half the people over 65 have osteoarthritis. So, of course, the other half don't. So I'm going to talk about why the other half don't and how you can be the other half that don't have arthritis. Probably a good idea. Let's see if my clicker's working. So tonight I'm going to talk about, well, the very obvious but needs to be said. If you have knee or hip arthritis, good idea to lose a bit of weight and put less stress on those. That helps with spinal arthritis too. Continuing moderate activity can be hard if you have sore joints, but this movement really helps to stop arthritis from progressing and helps to relieve the pain and disability. So within your ability to move, it's a good idea to keep moving, of course, with non-traumatic exercise. I'm going to talk tonight quite a bit about omega-6 and omega-3. And I know you've all heard about these, but I wrote this fun little book I call my fat book because it's kind of fat. I wrote a postgraduate textbook on dietary fats and oils. And it is very interesting. I think the eicosanoids are perhaps the most complicated labyrinth of nutrient interactions with health. And they're fascinating. And they include the very inflammatory leukotrienes or the non-inflammatory leukotrienes, also prostaglandins, which have a lot to do with pain and heat in joints and elsewhere too. So I'm going to talk some more about where you get omega-3s and where you get omega-6s and how to balance those out to lower your inflammatory reactions in your own body. We all know antioxidants are important for cancer, for heart disease, for Alzheimer's disease. They're also important in your joints. So we need to get enough antioxidants to make sure that we're not getting damaged joints. When joints get inflamed, they tend to produce more free radical damage. And this free radical damage can then, in a vicious cycle, cause more inflammation. So we want to quench that by using antioxidants. Now, who in this very intelligent and learned crowd has heard of advanced glycation end products? Okay, it's not an overwhelming majority. Good. I'd be glad to introduce these beastly little proteins to you. They're the unwelcome visitor that can't be gotten rid of. You can take them in through food or make them in your bodies, and our own proteolytic enzymes can't get rid of them. Now, perhaps the worst effect is wrinkles in the face. That's certainly unbearable. They are also the primary cause of damage to the kidneys and diabetes. They're the cause of damage to the brain in Alzheimer's disease. These cross-linked proteins can push out about 50 times the free radical damage that a normal protein can. And they also are very much related with inflammation throughout the body. So a very good idea to avoid advanced glycation end products in the diet, and I'll tell you how to do that. It's not hard, but there are some tasty foods, I'll warn you in advance, that have advanced glycation end products, like bacon. Now, beans can increase synovial fluid. Their content of phosphatidylcholine and phosphatidylethanolamine can help our synovial fluid, the grease, if you will, for our joints, to work better. So a good idea to make sure you have enough of those important phospholipids. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the human body. And collagen is the basis for skin, hair, nails, teeth, bones, and cartilage. So in order to keep your cartilage healthy, you need to have healthy collagen. So there are 4 minerals that are very important for, well, actually 4 nutritional elements. One's a vitamin C, that really help us to build collagen. You all know that vitamin C is important after surgery. One of the reasons is its ways of supporting collagen growth. So I'll talk a little bit about collagen, what it is, and how to support it for healthy cartilage. Now, there are so many supplements out there on arthritis. I mean, the list is almost endless. I, at one point, went to Costco.com and looked up arthritis, and there are dozens and dozens of supplements, most of which I really didn't think were that great, and a couple look pretty interesting, actually. But I'm going to introduce you to a few of these and talk about them. SAM-E, which is S-adenosyl methionine. ASU, which is avocado soy unsaponifiables, almost impossible to say word, but there it is, and glucosamine sulfate. So I'll also talk about some medical plants, especially one that seems to be the best. There are hundreds of medical plants used and hundreds of formulas used, so I'll introduce you to a few of the more fun ones. Now, if anyone has a question, don't wait. Blurt it right out. I'll try and keep on time in spite of that, because I have an extra 10 minutes. So I love your questions when you think of them. Otherwise, you might forget. Yes?
For people that are vegan, collagen, what type of collagen? The collagen is basically this animal gelatin.
You're looking for what?
Collagen.
Oh, you mean chondroitin sulfate?
No.
Vegans, how do they get collagen?
Proline, lysine,
For
and
people that are
vitamin C.
vegan, they don't eat any animals.
You have to take proline, lysine, and vitamin C.
Well, the last time I looked, none of the cows had arthritis in our field, and none of the pigs either, and they don't eat any animals where I live. It is interesting that there are some studies on vegans that seem to have much less arthritis. I am going to be talking about osteoarthritis principally today, but the buildup of collagen is not dependent upon meat. This is not necessary. I'll tell you the components, the nutritional components necessary for it. In fact, they're right on screen up here: vitamin C, iron, copper, and manganese. These are the nutritional elements necessary. I'll even compare a meat and a non-meat diet to show you the amounts of these minerals in some diets, so you can take a look at that. Okay.
What about a person who has build up too much iron?
Too much iron. Well, that's a good question, because iron, as you may have heard, Neil Barnard's recent book on the brain and Alzheimer's disease, iron can be a pro-oxidant if it's in excess and you're low in vitamin C and other antioxidants. Now, iron is very tightly regulated in this book, Vitamins and Minerals Demystified. I have a chapter on iron, as I do in all the nutritional minerals and vitamins. Iron in the non-heme form binds to the inside of the intestine and then is only transferred into the body if it's needed, otherwise flushed away. So the non-heme iron does not tend to build up in the body unnecessarily. However, heme iron, only found in meat, chicken, and fish, the blood form of iron, this will go into the body whether or not you need it, and hemochromatosis and other iron excess problems result from eating those foods because our bodies weren't quite designed to deal with the heme iron. We can't exclude it. As you may know, many of the vitamins and minerals are rapidly excreted from the body. But iron is very difficult to get rid of. The only way you can get rid of iron is through loss of hair, sloughing of skin. You need to lose tissue in order to lose iron. So it's a good thing not to get too much of it, and that's a very good point. So I just want to show you some pictures so you get a good idea of what cartilage is and where it is in the body. It's on the end of bones, so they don't rub together. There's synovial fluid and cartilage, and this kind of wraps the articular cartilage, wraps the end of the bones. And in advanced osteoarthritis, you see the bottom picture where the bones are rubbing together. This is what I would like all of you to avoid. It's painful, it's very difficult to move about, and there's a lot of inflammation, and it's not the way our joints are designed. If you get to that point where you can't really regrow cartilage, so I would like all of you to not get to that point, hence the lecture today. Now, there's some risk factors we can't do anything about. Higher risk when you get older, and if you've damaged a joint in your life from some sport or something, perhaps you're more prone to arthritis in that joint. There's a lot of risk factors we can do a lot about. Weight is one. Activity is one. Keep yourself moving. Nutritional adequacy, which means getting enough of the nutrients that you need. One of my favorite projects, now 10 years in the works, is the Diet Doctor. And this is software for analyzing your diet. I've used it now for 30 years. My original doctoral thesis in nutritional biochemistry, I had to do it by hand. But now we have a computer to do all the work for you. So you put in what you ate in a day, or your patient or client, and then it shows you graphically how much you got of all of the minerals and vitamins, nutrients that you need. You're getting enough calcium and manganese and all of these things. So you need to know if you're getting enough of all these substances. It takes the guessing out of diets. So I analyze not only people, but diets, like the paleo diet or the South Beach diet or the Atkins diet or the vegan diet. I analyze all of these diets, typical ones, and see how they rate nutritionally. How well do they match our nutritional needs? And I think this is a very scientific way to go about it. And most of the weight loss diets are not matching too well our nutritional needs. Pretty much all of them you lose weight on, but some of them you might not get healthy on. Fatty acid balances. That's going to be a key tonight, and a lot of fun with that one. Well, here's my weight loss diet. This one, if you analyze it, you'll see that you get everything you need with the one exception of vitamin B12, which for many reasons I think everyone should supplement with. How many people here do take vitamin B12? Is that not quite unanimous? You might consider making it unanimous. Vitamin B12, along with folate and sometimes vitamin B6, is important in detoxifying homocysteine in the body. And with the route through vitamin B12 and folate, it actually produces SAMe, S-adenosyl methionine. So you're turning a very undesirable chemical in the blood, which is a risk factor for heart disease and Alzheimer's disease, into something very helpful, which is even helpful in arthritis. So a good idea to make sure those two B vitamins are at least at the RDA level. You don't have to go wild. So this weight loss program, if you were to eat this fruit dish up here, would you feel deprived for breakfast? Might not last for 4 or 5 hours like the typical fat bomb of bacon and eggs. On the other hand, supply a lot of antioxidants, and you probably feel very light and like moving after breakfast too. If you could eat a quarter of your diet as fresh fruit, I think you'd wind up getting a lot of excellent antioxidants and important vitamins like vitamin C, it's only found in fruits and vegetables, and the carotenoids, very important for so many things, and powerful antioxidants in their own right. What if you ate half of your diet as fresh vegetables? Anyone do that? Me too. Try to, anyway. Hard to do on the road sometimes, but we do the best we can. Fresh vegetables are just powerhouses of nutrition. They have so many things when you analyze them, especially the green leafy. And of course, we all know about kale and cabbage and Brussels sprouts and how they have special properties to help us, for instance, fight cancer with sulforaphane. Beans are very healthful. The more I analyze diets, the more I see when people include beans, and many of the traditional cultures around the world include beans. Whether it's mung beans in the Orient or pinto beans in Mexico or whatever culture you have, beans, whether they be green or red or whatever color, black beans, they're very, very healthful nutritionally, and they have that satisfying feeling that makes your diet go better. Whole grains have gotten a bad name lately, but when I analyze diets, I see there are certain nutrients that seem to be more missing when people leave grains out. You certainly don't need to eat gluten grains if you're allergic to gluten or have celiac problems. And then an ounce or two of nuts and seeds are crucial. Did you know only 8% of Americans have the bare minimum of vitamin E? And the bare minimum, the RDA, is 15 milligrams a day, 22.5 IUs. This is a very small amount. If you read the 100-plus page monograph on how this was set, they clearly state it's not enough to prevent chronic disease, just barely enough to keep our red blood cells from exploding for lack of membrane stability. So people who get less than that amount certainly need to up it. And a handful of nuts and seeds, I'll talk about which ones are good. I'll take care of it. If you happen to have knee or hip arthritis, you might want to use insoles. Enough said. Certainly do soften the footfalls. I want to talk about the medical approach to arthritis. Now, were I a medical doctor here today, I would probably recommend pain pills and anti-inflammatories for arthritis. One of the best medical therapies, though, is physical therapy. Very helpful. If your physical therapist is gentle, you can have your joints worked, your flexibility improved, and be given exercises to help you stay flexible. Probably the best approach for modern medicine. It's difficult in advanced cases. It's hard to get to a therapist, and of course it's hard to move those joints once they've lost all cartilage. So I'm encouraging you all not to lose all cartilage. Anti-inflammatory and pain drugs not only have side effects, which I'll mention in a minute, but they also don't stop the progression of the disease. So your cartilage becomes more brittle, it breaks away, causes more inflammation. Cartilage becomes more brittle and breaks away some more, and pretty soon you have not enough or no cartilage left. This is not stopped by pain or anti-inflammatory drugs, but certainly my talk today is meant to support this so that you can have soft, springy cartilage that won't break away and will stay with us for a long, long time. And then, of course, there's surgery. This is one of the preferred methods for dealing, for instance, with hips that have lost their cartilage. Obviously, it's invasive. We all know it's expensive, and sometimes the length of time that, say, hip replacement stays with you is not so long as you might wish. NSAIDs are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. We all know Advil and aspirin. They cause about 40,000 deaths a year. The phrase safe as aspirin perhaps should not be used because aspirin tends to inhibit both COX-1 and COX-2. These are cyclooxygenase enzymes. COX-1 is a maintenance enzyme that, for instance, keeps the mucus in your stomach up. And by inhibiting COX-1, it inhibits the mucus in your stomach, thus causing perforated stomach and intestines, bleeding, and death in many cases, hospitalization for, another 70,000 people, and millions of people having very sore stomachs from these drugs. They work. They kill pain. If you have arthritis, I would not suggest you just stop taking them and walk around in agony. However, many of the studies that I look at judge it. They look at a population of people, they count up the pain pills they use in a day, say 10, and then during the course of the study, trying a natural therapy perhaps, at the end of the study, they look how many pain pills they're using. Well, if it's 2 or 3, then it's been a success. People are feeling less pain. Perhaps if they continue, they won't need any at all. The less, the better. Tylenol, we all know, acetaminophen, and it has been found year by year that we can take less and less because of liver damage. And it's in many products too, so you have to add up what you're taking all day long. You could barely get away with 2 extra strength Tylenols 4 times a day. We all know that Tylenol is kind of a wimpy painkiller anyway. Takes a while to help your pain and then is not that strong. So people with arthritis tend to not be able to kill their pain without taking so much that it hurts their liver. So there's got to be a better way than choosing between our liver and our stomachs. The COX-2 inhibitors were a revolution in drugs because they can stop pain without stopping mucus production in the stomach. They only influence the cyclooxygenase 2 enzyme, I'll show you more about how that enzyme works in just a minute. But unfortunately, they cause an epidemic of heart disease. Vioxx is now off the market. Before it was put on the market, they knew about the extra heart attacks at the company that made it. David Graham, a scientist at the FDA, has estimated 55,000 extra deaths from Vioxx and 140,000 extra heart attacks caused by Vioxx. Of course, this cost billions in lawsuits, but then they made more billions in profits. And this kind of a modern balance sheet is not to my liking at all, nor I bet to yours either. So Celebrex is a COX-2 inhibitor that's still on the market. Anyone here ever taken Celebrex? Powerful, isn't it? Works really well. But then again, now you're risking heart disease to take it. So I would like very much that you have an alternative to this. And since your doctors are unlikely to give you these alternatives, well, that's what I'm here tonight for. I've got a diagram here. Arachidonic acid. Who's heard of arachidonic acid? Okay, good. We have about 10% of the people that know their fatty acids. Arachidonic acid is an omega-6, but it is the most powerful omega-6, arguably 10 to 100 times more powerful than linoleic acid, the plant-based form of omega-6. If you have arachidonic acid in your cell membranes, then it can be removed with the phospholipase enzyme, and the lipoxygenase enzymes will then transform it into inflammatory leukotrienes. These cause inflammation in your joints. Also, the cyclooxygenase enzymes, which we saw just before, they produce prostaglandins, which can increase pain in your joints, and heat too, and other effects. Prostaglandins are very interesting. I have a whole chapter on eicosanoids in my book. By the way, if you'd like a peek at it, you can buy the whole thing downloaded for 10 bucks. It's too fat for me to haul around with me. But on my website, which should be on your paper on the bottom, you can go ahead and download a PDF. A lot of fun in there about fats and oils. I think fats and oils have some of the most controversy. And if you really understand them, which are the saturated fats, which are the polyunsaturated fats, what are trans fats and where are they found, you can really get a good understanding of the health effects of fats and oils. And like anything else, there's good fats and bad fats, and you get to know them. Arachidonic acid I would consider the least desirable dietarily, and it'd be nice if you could produce more of the EPA and DHA than the arachidonic acid to balance the effect of the eicosanoids. Now we see here Celebrex and Advil interrupting lipoxygenase and also cyclooxygenase, causing less inflammation and less pain in the joints. That's one way to do it. Okay, the next slide, we'll see that we have flax seeds and omega-3s here, perhaps walnuts. They are converted in our bodies into EPA. I've got a whole chapter in my book on how these alpha-linolenic acid, omega-3s in the plant-based form, are converted in our bodies to EPA, which means eicosapentaenoic acid. The eicosa means 20 because it's 20 carbons long, and the penta means 5 double bonds, which means it's extremely fragile. Yes?
I've heard you speak before, and I'm back for more. And my question has to do with flaxseed and walnuts. I just recently started taking them. I do have arthritis pain. I want to relieve. How long do I expect it might take before I feel some relief?
It's not enough, as you'll see, just to take flax and walnuts, because it is the balance of the omega-6 and the omega-3s. So for instance, if you're taking some form of arachidonic acid in your diet, that's going to overbalance the flax seeds and walnuts tremendously. Or if you're taking some form of omega-6 of the plant-based form, linoleic acid, that also can overbalance it. So if we can get the ratio down, now by my calculations, the correct ratio would be 3 to 1. 3 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. At this ratio, you produce the most EPA. Let me tell you, in your bodies, you're making EPA right now, and the amount of EPA that you make in your body always is more than dietary EPA, unless you're living on salmon or something. But you know, we make a lot of EPA in our bodies. I do have a chart of which nutrients assist this process and which slow it down, and that's coming up. Now, if you look at the different oils, I just said 3 to 1, didn't I? Well, flaxseed, 1 to 4, very corrective, flax oil or flax seeds. Canola, 2 to 1, soybean, 8 to 1. But then you get into all these that are too high. Notice olive oil is 14 to 1, not very balancing if you want to reduce inflammation in your body. Basically, you can pretty much sum it up by saying any added fat to your diet, excluding perhaps flax or walnuts, is likely to increase your omega-6s. And if you do that, it's very difficult to get the omega-3s up. So you really need to keep those down. That's part of it. And I teach this class at the University of Hawaii, and the first class I ask for volunteers who will try stopping to eat arachidonic acid and starting to eat flax and walnut seeds, walnuts. And over the course of just the first 2 weeks, they usually have excellent results in reduced pain and reduced inflammation, increased walking distance and flexibility. So it needn't take too long. You're exchanging those phospholipid fatty acids all the time in your cell membranes. So, 2 weeks is a bit short, but one can hope. Now, there's been some question about where arachidonic acid comes from and where are the omega-3s and the omega-6s. So in my dietary analysis tool, many years ago, I put in arachidonic acid so I could track which foods are contributing the most to diets that I analyzed. And I analyzed thousands of diets. And I found only 3 foods are the major contributors to arachidonic acid in American diets, with an interesting exception: turkey, chicken, and eggs. These foods are loaded with arachidonic acid, and the arachidonic acid, of course, will increase inflammation and pain in your body, especially in the joints. So by eliminating these foods, many people have had excellent results by doing nothing else but eliminating those 3 foods. Yes?
Is it egg white?
No. Egg whites have very little fat in them and no arachidonic acid, so that wouldn't be an issue. Yeah. Although, it's interesting, egg whites are often used for stiffening things. If it's a liquid like a salad dressing, ground up flaxseed, when added to a salad dressing, is already loaded with omega-3s, thickens the dressing. Just a good trick. By the way, did you know that flax seeds are almost always genetically modified? Good reason to get organic flax seeds. If they are not labeled, they're almost certainly genetically modified. I have a list of all the genetically modified seeds in my book on fats and oils, and it's a bit of an eye-opener. Plenty on that. So 70% in this study from lipids in 2003, 70% of inflammatory arachidonic acid comes from meat, poultry, and game meats. Now, there's an interesting note tacked onto my article in the Smart Life Form Bulletin that said that grass-fed or wild animals are a good source of omega-3s. So I put this chart up here for you. Let's take a look. I'm kind of a science guy. I was undergraduate in math and physics, and I like to see exact numbers. So I took regular beef feedlot, Australian grass-fed. They didn't classify any of the American grass-fed beef as grass-fed because they're only fed grass in their early life, and then they're put into a feedlot after that. So they couldn't classify them as grass-fed. So it may be that not much of the beef on the market really is. And then I have bison, buffalo, and deer meat. So I put the same amount, 3 ounces, not an unreasonable portion of each one. The fat is different. There's more fat in the feedlot beef than there is in the other wild animals. Cholesterol is about the same. You would think, geez, wouldn't it be less if there's less fat? But no, it's not less. And then the saturated fats are lower in the grass-fed and in the wild game. We know this is true, and this is one reason why they're definitely less contributing to heart disease than the feedlot beef. What about the fats? This is alpha-linolenic acid, or this is alpha-linolenic acid here. This is an omega-3, the plant-based form, 0.1 gram. Now, who knows how much you need in a day? Anybody here? 2 to 3 grams. Very good, Michael. 2 to 3 grams you need a day, and they're providing 0.1. So as far as a good source of omega-3s, not so good. And you notice that the feedlot beef has 0.1, the grass-fed beef has 0.1, the buffalo didn't have any, and the deer had 0.1. So if you're thinking to get your omega-3s from these foods, doesn't look good. Now what about EPA and DHA? No, none found. So EPA and DHA would be very difficult to find. Only if a cow, wild grass-fed cow ate some fish would he probably get any DHA. Unlikely. And then here's the clicker, arachidonic acid. 31 in your feedlot beef, 50 in the grass-fed beef, 50 and 100 in the wild game meats. So even though the saturated fat is lower, if you're talking about inflammation and pain and arthritis, these foods would not be beneficial. So I just wanted to point that out to the editor who happened to add that to my, yeah. But I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because we hear these nutritional myths that, you know, grass-fed beef provide omega-3s, but I like to check these things. By the way, very easy to check. The wild animals and grass-fed critters are all in here, and you can just look up your favorite one and check the fatty acid profile, which this isn't all of it, but this is enough that would fit on the slide tonight that I wanted to show you. Now, here are some diets. We have the Mediterranean diet, the Atkins diet, American diet, zone diet, a poor vegetarian diet where people are eating lots of macaroni and cheese and eggs, which works out, by the way, as bad as any standard American diet as far as saturated fat, low antioxidants, really not a good diet. A whole food, plant-based diet, a very low-fat diet, and a raw vegan diet, which is very popular on Maui for some unknown reason. So I took a look at the ratio in the diets. It should be 3, remember? We have 9 and 18 and 10 and 36 and 21 and 11 and 8 and 14. Do any of those sound like 3? Not at all. What if I put in 2 tablespoons of ground flax powder and reanalyzed it? We have the ratio now 2.9, 3, 3, 4, 6, 3, 1, and 6. Much better, isn't it? So you can correct, perhaps not with grass-fed beef, but you can correct with organic flax seeds your diet so that your ratio of omega-3 and omega-6 is just perfect. Another interesting thing is if you want to make your own EPA and DHA, you need to start with the plant-based omega-3, which if you look at the amounts in this diet are all under 2 grams, well, except for this raw vegan guy who ate a lot of nuts. Over here, though, you see they're all over 2 or 3 grams of ALA, so you can get enough with the flaxseed. Yes?
What is the risk with the flax seeds of them being oxidized and turning rancid?
Oh, absolutely. The reason why I'm not recommending flax oil is because it's very fragile. There are 3 double bonds. It's not nearly as fragile as EPA or DHA, but it is quite fragile. So you never want to heat it. And if you keep your flax seeds whole until you use them, they don't even need to be refrigerated. What causes rancidity? Heat, light, and oxygen. And the seeds are protected from those things if you keep them out of the sun. So what we do is we have a little coffee grinder and we just put them in and grind them before we use them. And that's the best way, certainly. Second best would be to buy a package of pre-ground flax seeds in the foil canister, which excludes light and oxygen, and keep it cold. Not so good, but if you're in limited cooking environment, that could work too. Flax oil, it's going to be rancid, so I don't recommend it. Yes?
How quick do you need to use it once you mill it?
Oh, good question. I like my wife to use it the same day, but she often puts it in the fridge till the next day so as not to waste anything, and that's probably fine. The flax industry has said that you can even bake it in muffins and it's not rancid, but I didn't really trust that too much.
So you do refrigerate it even after you mill it, even if you're using it one day?
Yeah, we refrigerate it after we mill it. Remember, the more double bonds, the more attack points there are for light, heat, and oxygen, the more fragile a fatty acid is, which is really a problem with EPA and DHA. Now, it's not a problem at all if you make it in your body, just if you're getting it externally. So isn't this fun, this kind of scientific chart? You get to look at the different studies. Yes? How long can you keep it underground? You know, the seeds are I mean, I wouldn't want to keep it more than a few months, but, you know, and you want to look for a health food store with a good turnover, because that's where you want to buy it because it's organic, labeled organic, hopefully. So I just buy enough for a few months. The seeds, you know, they keep very well. Seeds are designed to stop oxidation so they can grow. And just, that's how they are. So I just want to go over, if you're going to make your own EPA and DHA in your body, this is from actually my Fats and Oils book, in the chapter on making this. If you want more ALA, that's alpha-linolenic acid, the plant-based omega-3, desaturated into EPA and DHA, you of course need more ALA, and we saw on the last slide you can get a lot more by eating walnuts or flax seeds. Vitamin B6 and B3 are crucial. Magnesium, zinc, and iron are necessary. Vitamin E is necessary principally to guard these delicate fatty acids inside the body. Enough calcium and copper, not too much copper, not too little, like any trace mineral. And biotin, a B vitamin, and also vitamin B12 are all used in this process to create these long-chain fatty acids right in our own bodies. Now, if you have too much LA, which is linoleic acid, this is the omega-6 plant form. Bottled oils are the big culprit there. Salad dressings and oils is how most people get most of their plant-based omega-6. So you might want to take a close look at using less. How many people here don't even add oils to their diet? Okay, not very many. But try to restrict the amount. If your olive oil bottle lasts a year, that's better than if it lasts a week. Excess arachidonic acid, of course, is a problem. Excess cholesterol will interfere with the desaturation. Trans fats interfere. Oleic acid or fats, if they're in excess. Alcoholism and diabetes or hepatitis C both interfere with our production. A lot of it's done in the liver, so hepatitis is a problem. For people with hepatitis, for instance, hepatitis C, they may need to take EPA and DHA because they may not be able to make it in their bodies. This can be tested. There are certainly lots of lab tests. So how many people take fish oil? Okay, we have a few hands. Okay, it's the third best-selling supplement on the market, so I'm not surprised that some people are taking some fish oil. Now, does it reduce inflammation? Well, you know, it's really interesting. Fish oil has a lot of EPA and DHA. Well, some fish oil does, you know, salmon, sardines, mackerel, but not tuna, which has hardly any oil at all. But these fish oils also have another very interesting long-chain fatty acid, arachidonic acid. So isn't that interesting? They supply you with the omega-3 in the most powerful form and the omega-6 in the most powerful form, thus reducing their benefits and maybe helping us to understand why fish oil studies are not always so positive. There's a lot of imbalance in the fish oil studies showing help for heart disease or not help. And this may help to explain it a little. If we didn't get so much omega-6 in our diet, one estimate is we would need 10 times less of the omega-3s. So this will help a lot. So we may not need fish oil if we're limiting our linoleic acid. Well, krill oil is probably cleaner from environmental toxin standpoint for omega-3s. However, being an inquisitive guy, I checked into krill oil after Dr. Mercola publicized and sold quite a bit of it, and it seems to be extremely high in fluorine. Not a desirable substance to take internally. So you might want to check your krill oil for fluorine content. It certainly would contraindicate it for me. Yes?
Is fluorine related to fluoride?
Yes.
Oh, he turned over his
Yes, it is related. Yes, it's. Yeah, well, isn't that funny? He should analyze his own products there, I would say. Yeah, so just check it. You know, don't take my word for it. It's easy to check. Just go ahead and use Google Scholar or PubMed and look at fluorine and krill. And you'll see it's been studied. Oceanographers love that. Yes?
You know, at the lipid laboratory at Stanford at Buck Institute, I had a chance to visit them. All their research was shown to show how lipids should not be distracted from the origin. They should be kept, like if you're going to eat fish, eat the whole fish because the albumin, the protein encapsulates the oil from oxidation, right?
I'm going to talk about that in just 1 minute. Let me go to the next slide. And on the bottom of this slide, I'm going to agree with you very much. Recently did a study in South Africa where they produce a great deal of fish oil. And the researchers went to the companies that made the fish oil and got it fresh from them. Not in bottles, not on the shelf in the health food store, not on your shelf, but fresh from them. Then they tested it for lipid peroxidation to see how much of it was badly rancid. 91%, and that's out of the factory. DHA and EPA are just too fragile to possibly exist without going rancid. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever taken fish oil or krill oil or even algal oil. The rancid burp that comes after that is a clear indication that what you're taking is not too fresh. And your point about eating fish rather than fish oil is very good because there's less opportunity. When fish oil is made in a grinding and heating process, a lot of opportunities for light, heat, and oxygen to interact with the oil before it's finished extracting.
What about clary sage seed oil?
Oh, clary sage seed oil is an excellent source of omega-3, the alpha-linolenic form. And it doesn't seem to go rancid. It has some magical attribute. It's not vitamin E, but it has some sage-like qualities that prevent it from going rancid. And yes, that would be an excellent form of it. Yeah.
How about hemp seed oil if it's refrigerated?
Well, hemp seeds themselves, if they're fresh ground like flax seeds, then they do have quite a lot of alpha-linolenic acid, as do chia seeds. And perilla seeds are on par with flax seeds, even better. So perilla seeds, known as shisho in the Orient, you can get them at Oriental markets. Those would be an excellent source of omega-3s. Thanks for bringing that up. Good point. Yes?
Any comment on squid oil?
Squid oil?
Yeah, Dr. Sinatra is promoting that.
I have never checked a study on squid oil. It doesn't sound appetizing, but I'll make a note. Okay, but again, if they're extracting EPA and DHA from squid oil, the process is likely to make it rancid because they're just too fragile to heat. Yes?
Do you take fish oil?
Pardon me?
Do you take fish oil?
Fish oil? Oh, no. No, wouldn't go near it. And here's some other reasons. Contamination with mercury, very, very common. Polychlorinated bipheноls, very high in fish oil. The PCBs, these are endocrine disruptors and carcinogens, and they're concentrated in fish oil. Also mercury and dioxins, very much concentrated in fish oil. These environmental reasons are one reason why I would not personally want to go anywhere near fish oil. I go one aisle over from the fish oil when I walk down the store. Yes? Grapeseed oil. You know, I have all of these oils covered in my book. So if you want to download it, I cover each of the different oils, and I offhand can't think of the chemical composition of grapeseed oil. I think it's favorable, but I would have to flip through my book, or you can flip through it too and find that one out. Okay, so fish oil. Now here's a graph from a recent study. The PCBs in fish oil were more than the PCBs in meat and more than the PCBs in dairy, and everything else was less combined than these products. So if you wanted to get more PCBs, then fish would be the way to do it, and meat would be second and dairy third. For this terrible environmental pollutant was hailed as a chemical miracle because this is an oil that doesn't seem to burn in electrical transformers, and now it's a persistent organic pollutant that we just can't get rid of. If we eat the right plants, we might be able to make all the EPA and DHA in our bodies, thus avoiding pollution, rancidity, keeping us very, very healthy. Good idea to get it checked once in a while, though, anyway, just to make sure. Okay, this guy's... Pardon?
I heard chia seeds being talked about, but I know.
Chia, yeah.
Yeah. Did you say that they are great?
Yeah, they're good. They're about 1 to 3 in their ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, so they're very corrective to the diet. Chia seeds were popular back in the 80s when I was in med school, and I got really sick of them because they're so gooey and slimy. They're hard to grind because they're gooey and slimy, but the perilla and flax seeds are easy, and hemp seeds would be easy to grind too, although I personally prefer the flax. They're nice, they're nutty and easy to add. So this guy's crawling across the desert calling for antioxidants. So in this study in arthritis and rheumatism, vitamin C cut the risk of cartilage loss down to 1/3. So the people high in vitamin C had 1/3 the cartilage loss of the people low in vitamin C. Isn't that just what we want? We want less cartilage loss. So I thought I'd present this. Yes?
And what form of vitamin C, and can you get enough vitamin C from your produce
Right.
to make that
Yeah, now vitamin C can come from food. If you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, you might be able to get 300 or 400 milligrams per day. Is that enough? Maybe, maybe not. If we look at, now humans can't produce vitamin C in their livers like practically every other animal on the planet. There's like 4 or 5 other animals that can't. It's a 4-step process, enzymatic process. We have 3 of the 4 enzymes. We don't have the last one. So we cannot convert glucose into vitamin C in our bodies. It's done in giant factories for us. What about the animals that do produce vitamin C? Now we know that nature doesn't waste energy creating more vitamin C than is needed. So I looked at other animals, how much vitamin C they produce in their livers, and the smallest amount was produced by dogs and cats who produce about, if you average to 150 pounds, about 2,000 milligrams per day. That's quite a bit more than the 300 or 400 you could get if you were a real fruit and vegetable eating guy. The ones that got the most vitamin C, that made the most in their bodies, were mice. And they make about 20,000 milligrams per day if you could find a 150-pound mouse. So somewhere in that range is what we would make were we capable of making it. Perhaps that's the amount of vitamin C that we need. Unfortunately, most of the vitamin C in the market is ascorbic acid, and the ascorbated form would be preferable. So the mixed mineral ascorbate would be the best form of vitamin C. Why? Because that's the only way we can absorb it, the only way it's circulated in our bloodstream. Neutral pH is necessary for blood, and that ascorbated C is that way. It's a small difference, ascorbic acid and ascorbated vitamin C. The little emergency foil packs that fizz in water, those are fully ascorbated. And it's difficult to find a tablet that's fully ascorbated. I challenge you to find one. If you do, send me a link, please. My favorite brand is now gone. Beta carotene, another antioxidant. This is a fat-soluble antioxidant. Cut the risk in the study to below half of arthritis, of cartilage loss. Very good thing. And vitamin E cut it down by about 1/4 too. Did you have a question?
Yeah, liposomal vitamin C.
Liposomal vitamin C, it's a water-soluble vitamin that's not associated with fats in the human body, and it's found in watery areas, works in watery areas, needed there. I'm not a big fan of liposomal vitamin C, but fully ascorbated vitamin C, then you'd find me a big fan. Because that's how it's found in the brain, in the eyes, in the adrenals, in the bloodstream. And that's how it's found in food in many cases, but not all, except for very acidic plants. So I have in my vitamins and minerals book, I think we only have 1 or 2 copies left. This is my 10th lecture in the Bay Area. I don't know what I'm going to do for the 7 lectures on the East Coast. We're flying out tomorrow, but this is available from Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And it describes the supplemental forms of each of the vitamins and minerals, and which ones are very highly absorbable and desirable, and which ones are the real losers, you know, the cheap ones that the vitamin companies put in. This study in the Indian Journal of Medical Science, fairly recent study, says we need more antioxidants for less inflammation. They prevent the oxidative damage and deterioration of the joints. So part of the deterioration of the cartilage is oxidatively related. Another study from osteoarthritis in cartilage in 2006, lack of antioxidants kept the synovial fluid from being a good lubricator. Well, we need good lubrication. What happens if we have poor lubrication, say in our knees? We're going to crack off pieces of cartilage and wear our cartilage away. We don't want this. We want good lubricating synovial fluid. So a good idea to keep our antioxidants up. Of course, we all know berries are a great source of antioxidant. Beans are a good source too. And they're basically fruits and vegetables have a lot of antioxidants. Among the other classes of foods, well, let's see, meat, chicken, fish, dairy products don't have antioxidants in them. So they wouldn't be as helpful for this. Vitamin E, now this is a great study. They did surgery on joints, and the study leaders looked at joints that were damaged from injury and joints that were damaged by osteoarthritis, and they took a look at the amount of vitamin E in the joint. And they found that there was tremendously lower amount of vitamin E in the patients with osteoarthritis than healthy joints that had just been injured. Meaning what? Vitamin E is being used up. We already know only 8% of Americans get enough, the bare minimum. So good idea to keep your vitamin E levels up. And where do you get vitamin E? Well, not from salmon or broiled chicken or T-bone steak or yogurt or cheddar cheese, that's for sure. You can get enough vitamin E from butter if you eat 30 servings a day. But sunflower seeds are extremely rich, cheap, tasty, and pretty reasonable way to get your vitamin E. These are my favorite vitamin E pills. The ones that look like almonds, they are almonds. The ones that look like hazelnuts are hazelnuts. And you know, like all the other dietary analysis software, my diet doctor used to analyze only for alpha tocopherol. Walnuts, 0.7 milligrams in a serving, nothing. But I added all of the 4 tocopherols, and the tocotrienols are not really analyzed for, but I added the 4 tocopherols. Walnuts shot up to 23.5 on an aggregate of oxidative power through vitamin E. So walnuts would be very high in there. Pecans are very high too, very excellent food. I want to talk about plants and inflammation. Quercetin, the very common flavonoid, reduces phospholipase. Now I mentioned this once more today. Each of our cell membranes is made up of phospholipids, and each phospholipid has 2 fatty acid tails. Those tails can be any kind of fatty acid, trans fats, sat fats, but commonly the longer chains like arachidonic acid and EPA are stored there. If, as usual, there's too much arachidonic acid, when phospholipase comes and extracts the fatty acids from the phospholipids in the cell membrane, then it's pulling more arachidonic acid. So by restricting phospholipase, it reduces the amount of inflammation in the tissue and the amount of pain in the tissue. We have a sneaky way that quercetin in plants, onions, grapes, apples, berries, and beans. So these are foods that help with arthritis. Now, genistein is best known for being found in soybeans, also in alfalfa sprouts, chickpeas, many other peas and nuts, and peanuts. Genistein quenches inflammation and locks. Remember, lipoxygenase creates leukotrienes. It does it through a pathway, it's very interesting, that involves hydroperoxy icosahexatetraenoic acid. Now, remember that. There'll be a quiz at the end. Or HPEAT for short. This is an intermediary between arachidonic acid and the inflammatory leukotrienes known as LT4. LT4, why the 4? I remember it because arachidonic acid has 4 double bonds and it's derived from that. Inflammation can be reduced by many plants, turmeric, the curcuminoids, galangal, a relative of turmeric and ginger, and chamomile, for instance. Cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, and broccoli have indole 3-carbinol. This inhibits cytokines, which are inflammatory mediators, and nuclear transcription factor kappa B. So these plants, these simple plants, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, what else about those? Sulforaphane, anti-cancer if you eat them raw. So pretty interesting plants. What's the most powerful medicine in the world? Plants, food, more powerful than drugs. Well, for the sulforaphane to form, the isothiocyanates, do you like big words? I hope so. The isothiocyanates are digested by native enzymes, so you really need to chop the kale or cabbage up or grind it or something. Let it sit for a little while the myrosinase is the enzyme that digests them and forming sulforaphane and several other anti-cancer, and these are powerful anti-cancer metabolites that really inhibit it. I mean, they put Petri dishes and put cancer cells in, they put the sulforaphanes in, and they don't grow. I like that cat. 20 minutes more?
Yeah, and one way you can do it is like a massage kale salad. I haven't gotten into raw Brussels sprouts. Don't rush.
Her raw kale salad is wonderful. She does have a cookbook here with a lot of and one of the recipes is their creamy walnut dressing, which is several good things. One, you get your vitamin E, you get your alpha-linolenic acid from the walnuts, but then if you have a plate of vegetables, just steamed vegetables, sitting in front of you, what do you say? Blah. Now, pour the creamy walnut sauce over the top, and what do you say? Give me a fork. I'm ready. So really the sauce is the key to eating vegetables. And if, you know, the carotenoids in vegetables can't be absorbed without some form of fat in the diet. So if you're eating with a fat-free salad dressing, you might be losing weight, but you're not going to be absorbing all your carotenoids, the zeaxanthine and the lycopene and lutein and beta and alpha carotene. These are really good things to know. Now, what about foods if you wanted to increase inflammation in the body? Well, when animals die, there's a lot of bacteria in there, and our meat industry goes to great length to kill the bacteria, cooking, sodium nitrate, all kinds of refrigeration and things to keep the meat from having live bacteria, and largely they're successful. Well, it's true that most cases of food poisoning are from meat, and the largest cause of death from that, but still, they're largely successful. But what's left over are the shells of the bacteria and the endotoxins that they create. Now, this study and many others, this was in diabetes care and very recent, last year, are showing that when a food is high in saturated fats, the saturated fats tend to pull through the abdominal wall these endotoxins. So we're talking leaky gut here, but pushed by saturated fats. The endotoxins enter the blood circulation, the portal circulation in this case, and increase inflammation in the bloodstream and in the body and in the joints for perhaps 2 or 3 hours. And then comes lunch. Another 2 or 3 hours, and then comes dinner. So you're increasing inflammation continuously with these endotoxins. Yes?
One of the things you want to look at endotoxins leaking through the gut is number one is nitric oxide and serotonin. That is now being established by a number of scientific papers that came out showing that when you have a higher level of nitric oxide in the gut, accumulated by serotonin, it opens up and causes leaky gut syndrome.
Leaky gut's a really fascinating subject, but this is really a little different because they're just plain proving that the saturated fat foods, you know, animal foods with saturated fat, are pulling the endotoxins through the gut without really having leaky gut. They're actually able to transport these toxins that create inflammation. I thought you should know about this. It's kind of an emerging field, and there will be more literature on this, more studies. There's already been quite a few. Advanced glycation end products. It's a browning protein. The Maillard reaction is sought by chefs to make food taste better. When you have a food without water content and you fry, barbecue, or broil it, then you get these advanced glycation end products. From highest to lowest, they're found in chicken, bacon, beef, chicken, chicken, beef, chicken, chicken, beef, chicken, turkey, and chicken. So Uncle Cluck in a Bucket is very much a purveyor of these advanced glycation end products. They lodge, as I mentioned, in wrinkles, making the difference between old and young skin. They can build up in articular cartilage. This study in arthritis and rheumatism says that AGEs can increase the progression of cartilage damage in arthritis. They do it largely by stimulating inflammation and free radical damage. Now, there's 2 ways you can get AGEs. One way is by having a blood sugar rush. If you drink one of these monster Slurpees, your blood sugar is going to really max out. During the time that your blood glucose is high, then you're going to be glycating your own hemoglobin in the inside of your own arteries. And this, of course, is a big problem with diabetics because their glucose is high a lot of the time. And so the A1C is meant to measure glycated hemoglobin, and this is one of the more accurate measures of diabetes. They're also formed in food. Now, it's interesting. There's almost none in milk, but when it's aged into cheese, then you get these AGEs. So the reason I'm mentioning them is they are a component of arthritis. This study in Arthritis Research and Therapy, 2004, the AGEs, an interesting acronym, aging, increase the stiffness and the brittleness of cartilage. Okay? Not what we want. Stiff, brittle cartilage wears away. Soft, springy cartilage is what we want. Cartilage degeneration was associated with higher AGE levels in joint cartilage. So it is interesting that only the shorter chain AGEs are absorbed. About 10 to 20% of dietary AGEs are absorbed. But after a meal high, say a barbecue meal high in AGEs, your amount of AGEs in your blood can double. They get into your joints. They actually get into your amyloid plaques in your brain, causing quite a bit of trouble. And as I may have mentioned, they cause most of the trouble in diabetes.
Are AGEs involved in Alzheimer's? I know it's a type of
Yeah, totally involved in Alzheimer's. I would say that research shows that AGEs are one of the main ways that the amyloid plaques in brains destroy the brain, cook it down to half its size. Okay, let's take a quick look at synovial fluid in the joints. Synovial fluid is primarily made of phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylethanolamine, two phospholipids that are found principally in beans. Now, if you're going to eat soybeans, as was pointed out to me by a very wise woman, you better get some organic soybeans because the others are likely to be GMO'd and highly sprayed. So if you're going to eat beans, try and get the organic ones. I think it makes sense. They don't cost much anyway. Soy foods reduced inflammation. Now, I know there's been some rumors about soy foods being bad for breast cancer, prostate cancer, and other things. However, when I look at the literature, I have a large folder on soy. I find that it's protective against breast cancer. Recent studies show that women with breast cancer mastectomies than the ones who ate more soy had less relapses by far than the ones who ate less. Prostate cancer seems to be very positive. So I don't know where these rumors are coming from, but I could easily say the certain foundation would be the one. Yes?
I always wonder if the GMO ones are different than the commercial made.
Good point. Some of the studies are now being made with GMO because that's 87% of the soybeans out there. So phospholipids vary in different things. Coconut has almost none, canola has a lot, and soybeans and other beans have tremendously high amounts. I wanted to talk about collagen, this fascinating protein matrix that our cartilage is built upon. Our living cells, the chondrocytes of cartilage, are made by this collagen. And chondroitin sulfate is made in there. Vitamin C is crucial, 2 different steps in order to make collagen. Iron is crucial. We know too much iron is bad, too little iron is bad. Copper is required. Copper also can be a catalyst for oxidation if it's high, but it's absolutely necessary for the superoxide dismutase for one reason. And manganese, another important nutrient, is necessary to build collagen. So we look at diets, and here we have an Atkins diet that is low in all of these things and a plant-based diet that's high in all of these things. In this case, the plant-based diets do better in supporting collagen, which you asked a question about earlier, about collagen and a plant-based diet. So when you compare them and really analyze them, you see that they are providing the exact nutrients needed to form collagen and therefore cartilage. Now, SAMe, S-adenosylmethionine, is formed in the body when you have enough vitamin B12 and enough folate from green leafy vegetables, a B vitamin. Just the RDA is fine. If you do that, it'll take homocysteine, a very undesirable chemical, and make it up into SAMe. Now, SAMe is a treatment for arthritis. You can also buy it. This study showed, 24-month multi-center trial, they showed SAMe showed an improvement in osteoarthritis over 2 years, excellent long-term treatment, excellent long-term tolerance, unlike some of the pain pills. 18% of the subjects were arthritis-free at the end of the study, with no risk except a few bucks. Not bad. Double-blind clinical trials showed that SAMe was as effective as Celebrex, which we know is a powerful painkiller. It took more time, but then when people stopped the SAMe, it lasted for a couple of months after that. Pain-free, less inflammation, more movement possible in the joints. Now, SAMe alleviates the inflammation in osteoarthritis and better, different than a pain pill, limits further destruction of cartilage tissue. So if you wanted to increase the production of chondroitin sulfate, you would definitely want to take more SAMe. Glucosamine sulfate for arthritis, well, this study says it's safe and effective. This study says does not reduce joint pain and you shouldn't waste your money. This study says, well, we're not sure. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. What's the problem? They aren't long enough. If you were a pharmaceutical company, you wanted to prove glucosamine sulfate was worthless because it's eating into your profits, do a 6-week study, it'll do nothing. So it takes up to 6 months for glucosamine sulfate to penetrate down, and it does, into the joints and build them up. Cartilage is made partly from this compound. Now, other sulfur compounds are handy. This Tibetan black salt has sulfur compounds that can also assist the building of chondroitin sulfate. So I would recommend chondroitin sulfate not be taken as a supplement, but made in your body from having adequate SAMe, either through enough vitamin B12 and folate or from supplement. Yeah.
And now a lot of the sources of chondroitin sulfate are
Polluted.
contaminated with
Exactly. Yeah, chondroitin sulfate is often polluted. And if you're taking glucosamine sulfate, I prefer the vegetarian form because our animal industries, you know, they use a lot of chemicals, and better not to have that. Okay, so what about medical plants? In my Herb Doctor software, which has 168,000 footnoted facts, I'm happy to say, 30 years of my life in there, from 54 countries, I've gathered hundreds of the great herb doctors to see where they agree. Well, they agree on 243 different medicinal plants, but I'm going to cut it down to 2 for you today. Cat's claw seemed to reduce pain with activity. Looks like this, and cat's claw, fairly safe, no real bad problems with it. So that's something to consider. But boswellia seems to be the king of herbs for arthritis. Maybe that's why the wise men brought it to Jesus, also known as frankincense. All patients receiving the treatments reported a decrease in knee pain from phytomedicine in 2003. Increased knee flexibility, increased walking distance. Boswellia is really good. Now, I prefer that you did some of the dietary things, fatty acid balancing. I know Americans love to jump into the pills, but this really could help. It inhibits leukotriene synthesis, just like aspirin and Advil, but a lot more natural, and of course, it doesn't make holes in your stomach or intestines. Boswellia is a potent inhibitor of the biosynthesis of leukotriene. So inhibits inflammation, also pain from prostaglandins. Now, there's so many formulas. This one has ashwagandha, boswellia, ginger, and turmeric, and was not sponsored in any way. Pain was reduced in half compared to a placebo without any bad side effects. So this is one of many, many herbal formulas that could be helpful to you if you have osteoarthritis. MSM is made in this paper and pulp mill in Louisiana. It is found in the human body. The daily dosage recommended is found in the bodies of 294 men. It is found in food. The daily dosage recommended is found in 300,000 cups of milk, which is one of the highest sources of MSM. The natural sulfur advertised comes 99.7% from the added sodium sulfite, which is added to the paper and pulp to produce black liqueur, from which DMSO and then ultimately MSM is made. DMSO is the safest paint stripper on the market. And when it's oxidized, it becomes MSM, which I see as one of the most fraudulent, poorest studied compounds on the market. So I recommend if you get an arthritis supplement, try and avoid this one. Now, avocado, soy, and saponifiable seem to be really good for arthritis. BMC Musculoskeletal Disorders recently published a 6-month prospective, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, a gold standard study, cut pain in half, and they followed 260 arthritis patients, and the pills were well tolerated. So just to sum up here, I only have a couple minutes left. You can reduce obesity and weight, lose a little weight, that'll help your joints out a lot. Moderate activity helps, but trauma-free would be your friend if you have any sore joints. Yes?
The doctor told me about, I found them very helpful. As we get older, our bodies become more efficient and we move less. So, for example, sitting in a movie theater, you may not move at all. What he told me is to make it a point to move more frequently. And what I found is, for example, in a movie theater, it completely eliminates the problem of standing up. I don't have any soreness or joint.
Movement is the key. We all sit too much behind computers and
Very simple to train yourself.
yeah, and if you work in an office, there's some great exercises where you keep dropping your pen and bending over and picking it up, and in fact, some of the local Silicon Valley companies have treadmill desks, and they're traded out between the people during the day where they have a computer and they're on a treadmill while they work. So yeah, keeping active is the key to good joints.
I'm not talking about continued activity. I'm just talking about
Movement. Yeah.
uncross your legs, cross them the other way. It makes every joint in the body move, and that increases the amount of cellular fluid.
Great, non-traumatic, very easy exercise. I love to run. I'm 63 and all my joints are still working, thank goodness. But I know that if I should ever get arthritis running, it'd be out the door and it's back on the bicycle again. To decrease inflammation, a real key is boosting omega-3s and limiting omega-6s. I've told you so much about it. I have a book on the subject here if you don't remember everything I've said, although it is Smart Life Form, so some of you will remember everything I said. Boost those antioxidants. Fruits and vegetables are a good way. Avoid advanced glycation end products. Who vows never to eat bacon again? Okay, no hands. Oh, we have one. Okay, 2. Great. Soy foods and other beans can be helpful. Soy's not the only bean in the world. There's a lot of great beans out there, just more research on it. Build collagen. Consider taking SAM-E or avocado soy unsaponifiables and glucosamine sulfate, or at least sprinkle some sulfate salt on your food. It makes it kind of a rich flavor. You should try this. So we have a sample out here. Michael Coulter has some. Anna's in Switzerland. She just flew in today. So he has this black Tibetan salt out there. So I want to thank you very much. And I see that my time is just about up. Thank you so much. Thank you.